So Mariana, it's been a long time. I'm going to say maybe at least a year or 2 years since we've gotten together. It was usually at the Arts Club, I think.
Yes,
Although we met
we met
originally,
at the Arts Club.
we met at the Arts Club or at Ande Musique in Baltimore.
Um,
Because we got together there once,
yes,
and then I think I introduced you to Henry
and we right.
at the restaurant and so forth, back in the days when people could be social.
Yes.
So a lot has gone on since then, and anyone who follows you, like millions of people, know that you were traveling in Europe and concertizing a great deal. It seems like every time I opened Facebook, you were performing in Warsaw or Madrid or someplace like that with an orchestra.
Mhm.
So tell me what. Actually, why don't you go back over that? What was going on? Say the 3 years, 2017 to 2020 for you.
Musically speaking, well, I mean, I probably remember the most recent performances more. Particularly last year was very intense with performances in Spain, in La Coruña with Galicia Symphony Orchestra performing Saint-Saëns concerto, performing in the festival, Iturbis in Valencia, performing double concerto for two pianos by Mozart, and a solo recital, giving master classes. I also taught in a wonderful festival in Italy, Interharmony, which is run by fantastic cellist Misha Quint. This was past summer before COVID, and I was supposed to come this past summer, and it didn't happen, obviously, which is a great loss because it was a fantastic experience. So basically, performing concertos with orchestra and solo recitals, learning new repertoire, a lot of teaching at the same time. Um, I feel a little bit lost now when I have to think about particular years.
Right, right, right. I think we're all in that situation. What did we used to do? It's
It's been a while since March, basically, no performances,
yeah.
no live performances at least.
You know, ironically, because I recommended a student to Peabody a couple of years ago, I'm on a list at Peabody, and I was invited to a meeting a couple of days ago. I don't know if you are part of that loop because you're faculty there, but it was hosted by Mr. Hewling, and it was some teachers from around the world actually, and a couple of faculty members. And of course, they were talking about how they were coping in terms they were talking about the mechanics of, because for Mr. Hewling, his main concern is keeping the students
Mhm.
there. Let's face it, they need the revenue, and they need the students, and they need to keep the place alive. So at one point, I was silent for the whole thing, but eventually I did ask the question when everybody seemed to be finished. Um, the big thing that I'm seeing, especially my New York colleagues, where really a lot of the creativity is a crisis, an emotional crisis, an artistic crisis, which happens in many ways, and I'll sum this up because I want to hear from you, not from me. Um, One way is that there's no interaction. We're not hanging out with stimulating people. Two is nobody's performing, so nobody has an audience, and we're all jammed into this tiny little box of online streaming and trying to make sense. But but to come back to it, what is the emotional toll on all of us? That's the thing that really concerns me. And when I say emotional, I include the sense of artistic vision.
Well, I first, of course, almost seemed to enjoy a little bit the time with myself at the beginning, and then eventually I realized that I'm getting tired of being self-enclosed, and I definitely have been missing interaction, live interaction with my students, with live audience. However, what keeps me up is that, to be honest, I tend to go very deeply in music, so I enjoy the process of being alone with music. So sometimes I don't have this necessity of really performing in front of a live audience as doing it for myself sometimes. So this period of time gave me the chance of learning new repertoire, working on these pieces on a deeper level, just on one. Um, and I managed to find this type of growth during this time where I cannot perform in front of a live audience. Just finding my own growth through working on new compositions or listening new recordings, listening new music in that respect. So I'm just trying to stay busy and try not to get, you know, down, kind of depressed for not having what I had before. I'm just trying to look for new ways of doing something I love. And in terms of teaching, even though these past months I switched to in-person lessons occasionally every other week, actually where I'm sitting here right now, this is where I teach. This is Nellie Berman School of Music in Pennsylvania, in Haverford. It's a wonderful school for anybody who wants to study music, but mainly, obviously, there are lots of kids and children and young musicians who come to learn from exceptional faculty. Many of the faculty are Russian, so this is a school that is based on Russian tradition and is run by Miss Elena Berman. So we've been working online since March, but these past months I switched to in-person, coming here every other week. But what I wanted to say is that even though we've been working online for so long, I realized that also these lessons have been almost equally efficient,
Hmm.
because there are some elements that I cannot judge, fully, like for example, the pedaling or the sound quality.
Right.
But with more experience, I already, developed my ear in such way that I can already tell whether my student is, not changing the pedal well, or if it's the Wi-Fi, as well as different cameras, different angles give us a chance to look at hands from different perspective, and I am able to demonstrate when I teach online. So all my students stayed with me through all this time. So nobody decided to quit because we are going online. I hope that this is because I was able to show that our lessons can be equally productive. So definitely there is still, again, growth going on, um, musically speaking, because we're still learning. We're still learning. And now if we didn't have internet and we didn't have computers, how our life would have been.
I have not, I don't think I've lost a single student since February, which is very unusual. The truth is that when I travel, uh, which is for 3 weeks at a time in the spring and in the fall, I always lose a student or two. But when I come back, they realize that they don't have to take piano lessons and they actually enjoyed it. And I think there's more of a sense among the students. I think there's a bit of a sense of desperation. They want to make sure they keep this. They're grasping for things, and I think I'm guessing maybe in your case and certainly in my case, my students are very eager to 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 continue this growth. But certainly, you must miss walking out on a stage in Galicia or
That's
Valencia and the energy that gives to your practicing. I mean, I'm a practicing nerd, I will confess, and I love just I actually like practicing in a way as much as I do playing in front of people. It's very, as we know, it's very different. But there's nothing like a deadline, as we used to say. There's nothing like the guillotine to focus the mind. So if you're performing in 3 weeks, after you are in the air for 10 hours and you're going to be jet lagged and tired and sleeping on a strange pillow, and then you got to walk out and be a goddess in front of 2,000 people, that does
Yes, of
give
course.
you motivation. Yeah.
Yes, that's of course something I greatly miss, but I have to say we are all on the same boat in that. And I don't know, I sense that there is more sense of a community because we are all going through this together. And I think we understand better together. Sorry, we understand each other better just
Mm.
because we are in this together. And you know, by just seeing that all these great artists also don't have this opportunity to go on stage right now, it must be extremely difficult for them as well. I just try not to think about it so much. Not I try not to concentrate on that too much
Mhm.
because otherwise you know, my my life will be pretty miserable and I don't want to have a miserable life.
Sure.
And I just all I do is just to get myself ready for whenever we open the doors to the concert halls and we have this chance to go out on stage again. I have repertoire that I built and it's ready to be performed.
So tell me what's next in terms of repertoire for you?
Well, recently I've been concentrating a lot on Scriabin. I have to say that I found that my way of choosing repertoire is kind of peculiar, or at least I tend to think that it's peculiar. I don't know, maybe everybody does that way, but I doubt it. So I feel like a composer kind of rings a door at certain moment of my life.
Hmm.
For some odd reason, music of a particular composer starts speaking to me very intensely. And it kind of hunts me, you know, it just goes behind me until I really sit down and start working on those pieces, on that repertoire. It happened to me with composers that obviously whose music I knew very well, like Schumann, Mozart, Beethoven. But there was a particular year for Schumann, there was a particular year for Schubert, there was a particular year for Mozart when I was making this discovery for myself. And again, as I say, music I knew, but I mean a discovery because I've connected on a much deeper level all of a sudden with this composer. And it turns out that this time is Scriabin's time. So I've been working on Etudes Opus 8 and his third sonata. And I hope that maybe by the time, you know, I will have an opportunity to go on stage, all Opus 8 will be ready.
Now, have you done, what's your background with Scriabin then? Have you done any of the other sonatas or the prelude? I'm sure you've done the preludes and things like
I've
that.
done some preludes and some other etudes, as well as his fourth sonata.
Hmm.
But that was long time ago, and I feel that as a musician, I totally changed, and I definitely understand him, you know, right now much better than I used to.
I'm sure. I'm sure. The first time I heard any Scriabin was when I was a student in Vienna, and it was the Vienna Symphonica, the Vienna Symphony, and they did Poème de l'Extase. And I have to say, I was quite shaken by it. First of all, I was sitting, so I was looking down like this over the, let's see, stage right. That's a very small hall, Musikverein, and I was pretty much looking straight down on the orchestra, so it was a big fat sound.
Mhm.
But I just thought, wow, it was a real eye opener.
Yeah. Well, in his piano works, I think what I most adore about him is that I find his poeticism extremely sensitive.
Hmm.
He's very, very poetic, very refined. And that's what I particularly like. But of course, we are talking about mainly early and middle period, and his later works are already very, very different. But since I'm concentrating right now at this moment on earlier opus numbers, uh, that's what I'm enjoying the most. And then eventually, I hope uh, maybe to bring out also his late sonatas.
If I want to ask you how you would compare his learning his music to Rachmaninoff and Prokofiev. I mean, Prokofiev is mostly the sonatas, I guess. But I'm guessing you've done quite a bit of Rachmaninoff at some point or another,
Yeah,
preludes, etudes.
yeah.
So to me, Scriabin, all three of those guys, they write a lot of notes, Mariana.
Yes, they do.
And they require us to use all five fingers in ways that we weren't planning on using them. Um, so I see a similarity there, and of course they're Russian. But I'm wondering how, if you see what similarities and what contrasts you see between these three composers.
I probably have, I notice more similarity in the writing between Scriabin and Rachmaninoff.
Sure. Hmm.
Um, Texturally, because it's very dense. Um, I would say probably rhythmically, Scriabin is more complex than Rachmaninoff. Um, but I think what's crucial when we play these works is the flexibility of the wrist and the touch, the legato that comes also from the flexibility of the wrist, which I believe I always see this, connection with Chopin's legato.
Mm.
Chopin taught his students. He concentrated a lot of attention on the use of wrist and legato technique. He even he started writing a short treatise which he didn't finish because he died. It was a very short work. And he talks about all these things. And we can also read in a wonderful book. It's called Chopin, Pianist and Teacher as Seen by His Students.
Hmm.
And there are examples of what his students said, how he taught, and what he was concentrating on. So I kind of feel that Scriabin and Rachmaninoff have same type of technique. And when I work with my students, I always talk about that, to what extent the flexibility of the wrist um, and legato touch is important. Also because, Rachmaninoff's hand was very large. I'm not sure about Scriabin. Scriabin was a smaller guy.
Hmm.
But the stretches are still quite large, and we still need to be able to move around the keyboard a lot.
That's a huge difference between Chopin and Rachmaninoff. I mean, you look at the opening to the second piano concerto, where you're really required to spread your fingers
Yes.
in very weird ways that you won't see in Chopin.
Well, mainly they are, of course, obviously very different. Um, but I am talking about how, when I play, what I feel in my hand, how I have to approach what I see in the score. And the similarity that I find between these composers is that the flexible hand, the supple hand, the plasticity of the
Hmm.
hand is crucial for all three.
Right.
And in Prokofiev's case, I think that obviously we have to use probably this type of technique in more lyrical areas. But we know that he can be quite percussive and sometimes quite aggressive and very active, which is, in my opinion, quite different approach to the instrument compared to Rachmaninoff or Scriabin.
Oh, sure. I wanted to go in a slightly different direction. Just a year ago, less than a year ago, it was so easy to travel. As you know, I'm back and forth to very remote places in China, but also into Europe. And it's just so easy, you know. You buy the ticket online, and it's, you know, anywhere from 600 to 1,000 to go almost anywhere in the world, and you book places. It was just so easy, and you know, and if you're in New York, where you're running into people from all over the world, you can meet people for coffee in New York that have just landed from Berlin, you know, and and that was a great time to kind of, you needed more legs because you needed to have a leg in Berlin and a leg in New York, and in your case a leg in Baltimore as well. I'm wondering. Let's assume that will return, hopefully, in another year. How you look at that, keeping lives. I know you have a life in Europe, and you have a couple of lives in Europe. You have your Russian heritage, and then your Spanish upbringing, and then being now for quite a long time on the East Coast. I wonder how you view all that and how you kind of keep it all together.
Well, I think it's an advantage of having connection to another country and being able uh, to go back and forth. My family, actually, my parents live in Spain, so I really feel kind of desperate to go visit them, and I've been traveling back and forth. It's all felt great. I have lots of friends and good connections, and I hope that I will be able to resume that type of life as soon as the COVID will be over. Because you know, I am by nature someone who loves traveling, and every time when I did for competitions or concerts in different countries, I also took advantage to do some sightseeing, get to know the culture, to go on a hike, whether I was visiting Japan or Lithuania, you know, or
Sure.
Alaska.
Yeah.
And I definitely miss that a lot. And I hope that, you know, hopefully this will be over and we will get back to normal and we will have our regular normal interactions with people and be able to move freely wherever we want.
Now, do you see as just to continue along that subject? We need to nurture those ties. That concerns me a little bit now. In your case, you have a career in Europe, and you have a career here, and you have a career in the East as well, in Asia. How do you see maintaining the fabric of each of those, that network? We need those relationships, that network of relationships.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to be in touch with people and you know and have interest in what is going on their side in their life, how they're coping during this time. It's I find that it's important to keep the connections alive, and you know, distance or time, I think, does not matter as long as we are connected. Like even if I bring an example, you know, just talking about close friends. Some of my close friends are very close friends, and I haven't seen them in 4 years without COVID because they're just far. But it doesn't mean that my friendship changed because such distance separates us, or such this amount of time prevents us from meeting. So I think it works in the same way. If you believe that you are able to, you know, sustain a friendship, a relationship on distance, whether a professional relationship, it's also possible. Of course, it's very important to be very active on social media, and that's why everybody is doing it, especially during this time, because without social media, we don't know what we are doing.
I want to bring up a very important subject to me as an educator. I always ask my friends, how they got started. In other words, when you were 6 or 8 or 12 or 13, what switch went off, or as we know, it's often a particular teacher that guided us a certain way or inspired us a certain way. And I'd be curious to know from when you were, I'm sure that you started piano as a child, and but what between the age of 10 and the age of 17 drew you to narrow things down and focus in on the idea of being a performer and really digging in, getting into the deep water of music?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I come from a musical family. My both parents are musicians. My mother is a pianist. My father is violinist. My father works in the symphony orchestra. My mother teaches piano, so she started teaching me since I was 6. As a child, I remember that I liked it, but of course, you know, any young person can't decide at that age when you're 6 or 9 who you want to be. So I did have my that type of moment you are describing when there was no way back, and I'm so
Mm.
glad for that because I think that I was born for what I'm doing, and I would say this happened around when I was 12, and most likely was discovering music that I haven't heard before that I found absolutely amazing, and it just shocked me so much that I thought I want to play this, no matter how much time it will take me, but I need to play these works. And this was mainly, by the way, the music of Chopin. And I can
Aha.
bring an example of a recording by Christian Zimmermann with the 4 ballades,
Yeah.
and a recording by Barenboim with Chopin's nocturnes.
Hmm.
I think these were the first strongest impressions, especially like Chopin's first ballad. When I've heard it, I was like, oh
So
my
who
God.
did you hear first playing the first ballade?
It was Christian Zimmermann.
Zimmermann.
Yes,
I
yes.
think if there was a pianist, for me the ballades, I got a big kick in the pants from two particular people. With the first, it was Horowitz. You know, he was totally over the top on that piece, and then Ashkenazi.
Mm.
I had a recording of, I believe, of all four, but I was much older. I was probably 18 when I was listening to those.
Well, for me, you know, these are the recordings I remember my mom brought one day just all of a sudden, you know, and I was really impressed. And then, of course, when I've heard Chopin's fourth ballad, that was even
Hmm.
crazier experience. Then eventually I got the chance to hear his piano concertos, and Beethoven piano concertos was being introduced to this great music. Um, do remember with Chopin concerto was also, by the way, recording by Christian Zimmermann. That I did ask my mom. I was 12. When do you think I can play this? And she smiled and she said, "Well, if you practice well, a couple of years."
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I was offered an opportunity to perform it with orchestra, actually, where my father works now. At that time, you know, it was when was that? 96, I believe. Um, and um, and I played the Chopin concerto, and I could not imagine, you know, that what my mom predicted, it did happen. And then basically at that stage was no return. My parents never had to tell me go and practice. It was just my favorite time of the day. I
Hmm.
could spend 4 or 5 hours, and I loved sight reading to the point that my mom had to hide scores for me because I didn't want to work on assigned repertoire. I wanted to explore as many scores as we
Right.
had at home. So
Right.
that was the time.
Yeah, I'm sure that I think reading, just to jump back a little bit, as you know, it's a very small group of pianists that are actually good readers, and it's essential. I know that my our colleagues in New York that are playing every day, doing new music or doing chamber music, and kind of in that hot scene. The reason is because they don't really have to practice very much. because they can pretty much read anything. There's certain that small subset of humanity that has that skill. But I know that since you're talking about reading, that's essential for the composers we were talking about, Rachmaninoff and Scriabin. I think being a quick reader is essential to get into that music.
Well, I would say that sight reading the music of Rachmaninoff and Scriabin is obviously much harder than sight reading Mozart or Schubert, because texturally they are very, very dense.
Sure.
If you start sight reading at a younger age and you keep practicing in that it doesn't get lost, that will help you to learn the pieces much faster.
Sure.
So it's a big plus. Now, I was an avid sight reader, for the reasons that I explained, because I just wanted to play everything that we had at home. But then I kind of stopped doing that because I guess I sight read most of the things. And I would say that, you start losing it if you don't practice it. So I would encourage,
Yeah.
young students to keep sight reading all the time, spending, I don't know, half an hour a day, sight reading something,
Sure.
whether it's a piano piece, a song for voice and piano, chamber music, anything. It definitely helps.
Yeah. You have a background in visual arts as well, doing drawing and oils, and I understand that at the moment you're focusing on photography, and I'm wondering, first of all, I wonder what camera you're using and what kind of photography you're doing in your time right now.
I have a great camera, Canon 70D. And I'm mainly concentrating on landscapes, but it can be pretty much anything. Cityscapes. I'm hoping to explore also macro. What I like about photography is that when I would say turn on this type of looking at things, noticing what I see in front of me, but I feel like the time stops. So it's kind of a meditation for me,
Hmm.
turning on my eyes in a different way, seeing objects, seeing things that surround me in a different way than when I'm busy thinking.
Hmm.
I stop thinking. I just start enjoying more uh, my own life in that particular moment, because I appreciate the beauty that surrounds me. That's why I do photography. Um, and besides that, I've been drawing and painting. That was in the past few years, not very recently. Mainly, I have different reasons. One of the reasons about painting why I'm not doing that is because I'm not very patient with it. I kind of want to see the result right away, and photography, I guess, gives me this result kind of immediately.
Hmm.
And with painting, it takes more time. And sometimes I also was surprised why I'm so patient when I practice piano and I know that I cannot learn a piece in one day. And it needs time. But with painting, for some reason, probably it's related to visual. I need to see the result, and it's not there. This is one of the reasons why I haven't been painting recently. But I also was painting lots of landscapes, and my parents have big collection of paintings in Spain and drawings. I also have been doing drawings, portraits, with pencils.
Hmm. So for landscapes, do you go out to the countryside or you go to the beach or what? Is there some particular effort that you make to look for a subject?
Yes, I have to say that when I started photography, I had subject everywhere, everything that was in front.
Hmm.
If I wanted to do photography, I would go to a park. When I studied in London, I frequented all these wonderful, beautiful parks that they have: Kensington Gardens, Green Park, Hyde Park. And I was taking picture of trees, flowers, but now I'm much more selective. And usually I need a plan. I need to know what I want to take pictures of. And I like to hike, and I need to travel to that location. Now with COVID, it's more restricted, of course. Usually searching something in a park, in a botanical garden, for example. It can be a beach, if it's a sunset.
Mm,
Um, Working on different effects with water, how to blur the water, looking for waterfalls. Like when I was visiting my parents in Spain, I would research the areas nearby to see where are different waterfalls where I can go and and take pictures of those beautiful places of nature.
mm. Mariana, this has been a lot of fun hanging out after a couple of years.
Yes, it's
Hopefully, we'll get to meet up before long. That shouldn't be too so out of the question. I know our friend Henry is, he has not stopped doing concerts, as you know,
yes,
on the
it's
Musique.
fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Henry and I are in regular conversation, um, but I wasn't sure if he was admitting any audiences yet. At the Arts Club, I produced two myself, and it was just me and the performer.
Hmm.
Although I will confess, I invited for the Japanese artist, I brought a diplomat from the embassy and his wife and another Japanese supporter. But really, it was an empty room, officially an empty room, no applause, which is a strange thing. So, Mariana, thanks a million, and I hope to see you before long and hear you play. You're one of my favorite pianists, and I so enjoyed the Debussy at the Arts Club. It was just exquisite, and hope to hear you again before too many decades go by.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was wonderful to converse with you, and I do hope that we will see each other in person sooner than we think, than we hope.
Thank you, and you've inspired me. I'm going to have to look at some Scriabin in your honor.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye bye.